Let's take a look at a trade review here we had on ticker symbol CRWD, that is CrowdStrike Holdings. And this turned out to be a really good trade for us. So it turned up or showed up on the scanners the end of this day, end of yesterday, and it looked immediately it looks good because we can see this uptrend and we can see that it's bouncing at the 50. It's hitting right there at the 50 and bouncing up. And that's the 50 SMA. And so we had a good river to mountain setup on a bullish play. Now, everything's looking good so far. We've got it meets the criteria for this, what it's supposed to look like anyways, with our river to mountain. And now we just got to look for support and resistance. And as far as horizontal support, there really, I didn't see a lot. There's tiny little levels and little kind of supply and demand zones, but I didn't see anything that was real indicative of a to move this up. However, if we zoom in, we can do this and draw this line right here, and we can see that we've got a really solid trend line where from this point, from the 365 low right here at 130, prices continually and steadily started to rise. So our signal was here, and the day before we bounced at this trend line. Uh, so I felt pretty good about that when combined with the fact that it's a river to mountain setup, meaning that it's bouncing at the 50. So we've got the 50 SMA and this trend line. I did feel pretty good about it going higher if it were to trigger, which it did. So on this one, this day right here, today, our trade day, what we were looking for is a break of 179.63. What that means is up here, I need to see it print 179.64. I don't want to see it just hit 163. I need to see it break. That is our trigger. That is our that's our entry level, is seeing that break, the break of our trigger. And it happened. It happened fairly early. We'll jump into the 1 minute in just a little bit. So again, with Armor Trading Systems, everything up to everything through the entry is laid out for you in the war room. The night before, I send out my watch list. The morning after, in the war room, we go over that watch list and decide which stocks we really want to take a look at and which ones we want to potentially trade, as well as I explain why I put them on the watch list in the first place, as far as the setup and support and resistance. And then we go over the entry or the trigger. And it's always a very, very specific number. It is not a range of numbers. It is a very specific number that we're looking for. Or more specifically, a very specific number that we're looking to see broken and price move past it or below it, depending on if it's a bullish or bearish play. Then it just becomes, how do you want to exit? And I'll go over, as usual, the three that I use, or that I don't really use all of them, but these are just three common ways to trade the system. The first would be to either exit completely or scale out into previous resistance or support. But this is a bullish place, so we're scaling out into previous resistance. Now, for me, our entry, our entry was, where was it? Right in there, in that range, right in there. That's pretty close. So remember, we wanted to see it break 179.63, the first exit area that I would have been if I were to be scaling out into previous support or resistance, would have been right here at this level. At this high right here, I felt pretty good about that. I was fine with recommending that. And that high, that's around 182. So you're looking at about 2.5 points, maybe just a little bit less than 2.5 points from the trigger to right there. And that's a really, really good trade. I mean, 2.5 points, that's solid. That's over well, no. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good trade. The second spot would have been right here at this high, and it did. We can see price. That's basically was the high of today as well. was right there, or right at it anyways. I think we got a little bit higher, but that's not important. That would have been a good spot to take the rest of your profit. Now, for me, what I always say is that if I were to be trading this way, full disclosure, I typically don't, but if I were, I would take out most of my position at the first area, and then move my stop up to my entry. That way, I never, or not even to the entry. You don't have to do that part. It doesn't have to move to your entry. It's just a good idea sometimes to move your stop all the way up to your entry. Um, or you can move it, to the low of day, right in there, whatever you decide. But you need to move your stop after that first entry so that you know that you're not going to allow a winning trade to become a losing trade. That is the key. And also because you took most of your shares, or you don't have to, but what I would say, if you took most of your shares off at the first area of resistance, you've had a successful trade. You've had a good trade no matter what price does from there. Now, the second way to, or second example of exiting would be to, when it triggers, enter that trade and set your stop and let it ride throughout the day. And as it moves higher, you can move your stop up if you want to protect yourself, protect some risk. Uh, like as always, what I always say with doing this is that the downside is that sometimes winners can become losers doing it this way, but on the plus side is that sometimes you get to catch really big winners, and you get these runners, kind of like, I mean, this wasn't really a runner, but this ended up being a really big move. From the trigger to the exit was, what's that, like 8 or 7.5 points, all the way from the trigger to the exit, or to the end of the day. Solid trade. I mean, 7.5 points. That's massive on a trade like this, a sub $200 stock. And it sometimes it happens like that, where you catch these big runners and it works out perfectly. It works out great. But remember, if you're going to do it, if you're going to trade that way, yes, you will get some big winners, but your winning percentage will probably go down a little. Um, but you have the potential to get some really big winners doing it this way. All right, so the third that we'll go over is scalping. So we'll just zoom in on this area right here. So 179.63 was what we needed to see break, and it broke it right here at 935. And we can see what happened basically. I mean, it started off the day not great, but then it started to bounce, and as it started coming back up, just a few minutes into the market open, we had our trigger, and we could enter here at 935. And from a scalping standpoint, truthfully, remember, we're looking for the break of 179.63. The very next minute at 936, we had a high at 180.61. So we went up almost a point in a minute. Now, that's great, easy trade. On the flip side, what I always want you to be aware of, because yeah, I could point out trades like this all day long and get you excited and everything, but I want to be able to teach you. I want you to understand that yes, this looks good and this looks easy, like an easy trade, and yes, it was really. However, there are times where we trigger and price goes down. That is why it's so important to have a good risk, or have good risk control, and have a good solid stop set in place. And that I go over those in the mornings, um, in the war room, and you can use my stop that I recommend. It will be a much wider stop than what you're probably used to as a scalper. So as a result, your position size will be lower. Your buying power will be lower for each trade, which is actually a good thing. But it'll also mean that your profits are smaller. However, what it does is it completely protects you against a really, really bad loss, because you've already come to terms with what your max loss could be. and you stick to that. You don't kind of hold and hope type of thing. Um, so again, this easy trade, we can look at it. I mean, even if you held it for 5 minutes, where you're talking like some really good money. If you held it for 10 minutes, then yeah, this would have been unbelievable from a scalping standpoint. So good trade all around. This was nice. Remember, as a scalper, have your risk. Your risk needs to be defined, and have a good solid stop set in place. Overall, we can look back at this, even hindsight, and kind of see after this move that we captured just how beautiful this trade was. Uh, just a nice, pretty looking trade on an uptrend. Wasn't very much stress involved because it was pretty much went straight up after our entry. Um, didn't have a whole lot to worry about on this one. Worked out great, and thankful for it. So if you enjoyed this video, I hope you like and share it, and I hope you feel free to subscribe. It would really mean a lot to me. I'd appreciate it. Uh, and again, thank you for watching, and God bless.